Darling one, you were born from the sweetest love, cast from the fires of creation, burning bright into the making of your perfect constellations. Head high, my love, never let them diminish you. Stand tall in the power of your love. Break open to the thousands come before you, written in your heart with holy blood. Keep going, my love. Hold tight to the scripture of your inheritance, your dreams born from ancient stone. Weave your magic star of wisdom, breathing life into hollow bones. Courage, my love. Place pain upon your sacred altars. Grow seeds where life has become hopeless. Lend hands to those who fall and falter. Let love be life's greatest opus. Hello and welcome to Dreaming the Ancestors. My name is Tara Wild and I'm really excited to be here with all of you to dive into yet another podcast episode where we talk about remembering and reclaiming ancestral stories, feminine wisdom and earth magic. And I'm very excited to welcome Aoife Ní Réamainn to the podcast today. This is the 9th episode of the 2nd season. We are streaming live on Facebook and on YouTube, and a very warm welcome to everyone who's here live. Please feel free to say hello in the chat. It's always really lovely to see some of you here live, and a big welcome to those of you who will be watching this recording later. So I'm going to give a brief introduction to Aoife, and then I will bring her on for you to meet in person. Aoife is a daughter of the land of Eru, working on restoring, reclaiming, and healing cultural identity, as well as ancestor and land relationship on the land of Erin. Aoife founded Leas Danan, where she weaves offerings inspired by the ancient land of Era, often in collaboration with her community. So I'm so excited and honored to welcome Aoife to the podcast today. Aoife, welcome. Maybe you just want to say a quick hello to everyone.
Yeah, Díoghuit Tara agus Gachéine Ella. Hello everyone. It's a real honor to be here. Thanks Tara for having me, and wow, what a beautiful introduction. It really, touched my heart there. So it feels really, really good and appropriate to be here right now. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Aoife. So on this podcast, we always take a moment here at the beginning to close our eyes and just imagine that we are having this conversation in the flesh, heart to heart, and we're sitting on the ground around a great fire. And we're sharing wisdom, we're sharing stories like our ancestors have done for so many generations, stretching back into the mists of time. And as we hold this vision in our hearts and minds of being gathered around the fire, I'd like to bring in the energy of the ancestors. And so Aoife and I will in turn honor our ancestors in whatever way feels most potent in this moment, and really drop into the energy of ancestral memory and ancestral remembrance. So I'd like to honor my beloved ancestors, Nashan Shinshir, my old ancestors of blood and bone, the elders of the lineage, who stand in the mists of time, who are deeply connected to the lands of Era. I'm really inviting in, welcoming in the ancestors who knew how to live in right relationship with the land, who were deeply connected to a sense of place, a sense of belonging. And I'm really feeling the presence of the trees, the native trees of Era in this moment, and feeling the ancestors standing alongside the trees, really in circle as one family. And I know that we're going to be talking about the people of Ireland as people of the trees later in this episode. And I can really feel that energy in this moment, feeling the ancestors as the trees themselves, even. Fáilte na sean sin seir, welcome to the old ancestors. Míle buíochas. And passing over to you now, dear Aoife, to honor the ancestors.
Oh, sin sherry, sin sheró, sin sherry. Is mis sé Aoife Ní hEochaidh, Réamainn, Loudon, Campion, Flanagan, Ní Bhardún, Price. Is mis sé an Tinna Arsan a Haisling. Is mis sé Inian na Héireann. Agus tám an seo lán le buíochas. As an brontanis on my sinseir. And I give thanks to the ancestors of blood and of spirit, those that strengthen and support my soul's journey, those that honor the children's fire and the pledges of my soul. I give thanks to you for guiding me to this point in my journey to sit in this conversation with you and with my dear sister Tara and all these beautiful beings who are tuned in this moment. And I honor the ancient ones, na Tuatha De Danann, and the ancient medicine keepers of the land of Eru, who have guided my journey since my first breath upon this earth and in all my lifetimes. I honor you, the people of the trees, the guardians of the wells and the springs, you, the wisdom keepers of the stones. Oh hey, a shinshiri, gaunwich ar weachas, gaunwich ar gra. We give thanks and we give love in this moment. We honor you. Fáilte, Tara agus fáilte.
Guru Maigat, dear sister. So, so beautiful. Really feeling the energy of the ancestors in our circle now, and the beautiful medicine that you're bringing forward from the ancestors. So the title of this episode is Irish Tree Wisdom, Plant Magic and Land Tending. And I'm really so excited to weave into connection with the spirit of the land, the trees, and the plants of Erin through this conversation. During my pilgrimages to Ireland over the years, I've found myself in such deep reverence of the land and the feeling of homecoming that I receive each time I visit. And I've had just so many beautiful experiences listening to the sacred sites, communing with the forests and the coastlines and the spirit and story of place. And I know that many people living in the Irish diaspora experience that powerful sense of home when they visit Ireland, a feeling which really seems to emanate from the land itself. And Aoife, as someone who's in continuous and conscious connection with the land, as a teacher, I can really just only imagine and sense the depth of relationship that you've cultivated over the years from your first breath, as you beautifully said in your ancestral honoring. And I'm really looking forward to receiving some of your wisdom. So I would love to begin this conversation by hearing a little bit about your personal journey. You know, how did spirituality and land connection really become important in your life? And how has this wisdom path unfolded over the years?
Thanks, Tara. So yeah, it's kind of like, sometimes people say, oh, I remember this point where I had an awakening. And as much as there are timelines and kind of, I suppose, pillar points on my journey, it feels like it was just always this way. Like, as in, my soul came in and it just knew, like, I had that innate connection with spirit. And I always had a sense of being connected with the other realms. And I remember as a child, I would have prophetic dreams. So I would have dreams of quite dark things. So it wasn't like always pleasant. But now that I look back on it, I understand that it was a lot of unprocessed ancestral trauma that was held within the lineage that I, as a child, below the age of 7, was actually processing and witnessing and being shown. So from quite a young age, needless to say, my eyes and my spirit was very much so open, and I had a sense of being connected with many different dimensions, actually, not just I suppose, the earthly plane. I would say, the stars, and yeah, and the underworld, or the realm of the ancestors. It was always very present for me, and what propelled me into it, I have to say, was actually a lot of pain, and my surroundings not matching up to like what my soul knew to be true. So my soul came in and it was like, yeah, I've been here many times before. I've lived at Tara, like this kind of thing. And then I'm like, wow, I'm actually, in a council estate in a really rough part of Dublin. And, there's a lot of crime, there's a lot of drugs and disconnection. But also it's right at the foothills of the Dublin Mountains where I grew up, and was an ancient graveyard. It's where the first settlers of Ireland actually came to, the Partholonians. So like it is a very ancient place that was basically built upon, and it, is quite under, what would you call it, a disadvantaged kind of place, I suppose. So from the depths of the density of my surroundings, but the ancient energy that resided beneath the land, it propelled me into my path. Because basically it didn't feel kind of safe anywhere, to be honest. Like, there was a lot going on at home. I knew from the moment I stepped foot into school, this is not me. This is completely the opposite of who I am. Like, like my soul was just like, no, school isn't actually it. I'm meant to be out in the forest. Forest is school. Um, but basically, I was always trying to find that place, and where I found that safety was in nature. So I was basically never able to stay inside. I was outside all the time from quite a young age. And so, in many ways, the land was that home and that place of safety. And that developed over the years. Um, but yeah, I would have had pivotal kind of points of making a choice of what my path was going to be in terms of spirituality, and especially because I went to a very Catholic school, which was quite normal here in Ireland. But basically, when I was like 8 years of age, and I kind of had this moment of realization where I looked around the hall and everyone was saying these prayers, and I looked around and I said, I don't know if I actually believe in this. And then I kind of did a little thing where I left my body and I scanned the room, and everyone's wearing these uniforms. They're saying these words that they didn't actually really mean or connect with. And I said, this isn't it. I was like, no, this actually isn't it. Um, and when I decided to stop, the nun actually noticed in the room, and she came over to me. I mean, hundreds of students, and she started to ring the bell in my ear and say, like, say your prayers. And I was like, no, I'm not. And in that moment, I really I like, thank God I was thank God that I made that decision. But from that moment on, I decided to dance to the beat of my own drum, and I did. And I always stayed true to my own innate connection with spirit, and I would pray in my own time. It wasn't like, oh, I'm just turning my back on spirituality. It actually propelled me into finding out what that really meant for me. And since then, it has been about the land, and it has always kind of been come back to the land again and again. So yeah, I would say there has been many dark nights of the soul upon this journey of just 26 years in this physicality. There has been many, many dark nights of the soul that have propelled me deeper and deeper into truth, into love, and into connection with myself and the earth. And the earth has, and the land has been a constant throughout that stream and that journey. So yeah, I mean, I could go on for this whole hour just about that. You know what I mean? It's kind of yeah.
Mm. Yeah, thank you so much. I resonate with lots of what you shared, and really hearing that call from the earth, and that being the primary path of connection into the realm of spirit. And I just really resonate with that so deeply, and I'm sure many other people listening do as well, knowing the kind of listeners who tune into this podcast. And I was reading some of your personal story on your website, and I really loved reading about your time spent off grid in the woods. And I got really curious about that, and I'd love to hear more because, of course, living off grid is something that most people in Europe and North America and beyond, of course, are, they're not living in that kind of way, in such close connection to the earth. And so I'm really curious to ask you, what were some of your biggest lessons from that time that you spent living in such deep communion with the earth and living off grid?
I'd say really probably the biggest thing was to listen, probably to slow down and listen, and to open myself to another way of conversation, or another way of communicating with the elements and with the land. Because it's not as if like the land communicates in words as such, but there are subtleties and feelings and emotions and an exchange that you really have to slow down and open yourself to that listening. And yeah, like, looking back on it, I was waiting my whole life to do that. I was like, with the school thing and all, I only did that because I had to. And the moment I left school, I broke out free and went and lived wild. And I was like, wow, this is it. Like, this is actually what it's all about. Like, you don't need much other than just being with the elements. Like, I could happily, not do anything ever again other than just sit with a fire and draw my water from the well. And this is actually this is what being human is. It's like all the stuff that the narrative that's being put out there, like, you have to do this, this, and this to be successful. For me, the success actually came from gathering my nettles and learning about the nettle from being its neighbor, living beneath the oak tree, drawing water from the well, and learning how to make a fire and tend to a fire. Um, so yeah, for me, it was really about slowing down and being like really, really in the moment, but also learning how to, like, you have to think about the future when you live on the land, because it's like, oh yeah, winter's coming, you need to have your wood. Do you know what I mean? It's like, oh yeah, well, some of these plants are only going to be around for a certain amount of time, so I need to dry them out or preserve them in order to have food over the winter. So there is this sense of when you're living with the seasons, and living cyclically, you're really in the moment, because if you're not in the moment, you're going to miss that birch sap. Do you know what I mean? You're going to miss the boat for the birch sap. You're going to miss the boat for, the different times a year for foraging and harvesting the medicines of the earth. And when you miss them, they don't come back for another year. So there's this sense of really being on the ball and being in the moment, but also looking towards the future, because, you need to have your ducks in a row, or you need to have your stock in order to survive and to be nourished in the times that come. And so it's like, I think it really showed me how to, yeah, as I said, be in the moment, but look to the future at the same time, and to, yeah, to just really embrace all the different parts of the seasons, because we live in a world that just wants summer. It wants summer all the time. And we live in a yang well, I don't know if we live in a yang, but the main narrative out there and the main kind of stream of society is living in summer and yang and go, go, go. And what, like, one of the greatest gifts of living with the earth and living off grid is, like, you really, like, the lights go off, the lights go off. You know what I mean? There's not like, you're not staying up all night on your phone. Like, I had no smartphone for 3 years, and it was such a gift. Like, then I got the message, you need to come online now and share what you learned with people. So that was why I came online, and it's a great gift to be able to do this right now and to spread this message. But those 3 years when I didn't have, and I was like just going from one fire to another, one fire to another. People, when I, lived on one piece of land for a good while, in a little self-built hut, people would come to me, and there would just be gatherings the whole time, and just living so in the moment. Um, and the fire, the fire is the television, and really living off grid for me, it was always about the fire. It was always about, yeah, the fire, and how much it was giving to me, and how much it was literally the spirit that was sustaining me in every moment. And tending to that fire was like tending to the spirit of my own heart and the heart of my ancestors. And that was where I really learned. Um, like the fire is it, like, do you know what I mean? It's like, do you know, it's not like, oh, just say, oh yeah, the fire, light your candle and say your prayers. Like, it literally kept me alive, and I really understood the depth of how important the fire is when you live with it in such intimacy, and that it's, yeah, it just becomes your everything. So there was, yeah, it was a very deep, deep process. And I know I'll go back there as well. You know, I will get back to kind of living closer in that way, but I'm at a kind of a different stage in my life where, yeah, spirit is asking me to live in the way that I am now, which is not as off grid.
Yeah, beautiful. I really resonate with your words about tending the fire, and this is something that I do in my own practice and my own life as well. So I live in the mountains of Colorado on what's the ancestral lands of the Ute and Arapaho people, and we get snow most of the year. And so, heating our home is all about the fire and tending the fire, and this is something that I've really just, it's been so powerful, as you were sharing, really being in such deep communion and intimacy with that fire, and understanding that the fire is life, the fire is warmth, the fire is heart. And I really resonate with all the women who were fire keepers before us and the ancestors who would have tended that fire, and so it's a continuation of that lineage. And so, yeah, it's really beautiful to hear very similar words that you just shared about that act of tending the fire and the devotion and the love and the life that comes from that. Really, really beautiful. And I also really love this image of you beneath the oak tree, I think you said, and how, I can really feel your connection with the trees and, the wood and the fire and this the seasonal way of living. And I really loved something that you shared about people of Ireland being people of the trees. And I would love to hear just more of your thoughts around that. Like, what does that mean to you, collectively and also for you personally?
Mm, thank you. Yeah, so, in terms of the trees, like, it's like, what is Ireland without its trees? And I know at the moment we're actually in a dire kind of state because, like, we're like one of the lowest native woodland percentage of native woodland in Europe. And we're like really below the mark of even what the, European Union is calling out for. So we're actually, well, we're amending it. A lot of trees are being planted, but it's been a long road to get to here because of colonization and the cutting down of the trees. But, actually within all of that, you can see how there is a reclamation happening of, our cultural identity and everything. And a huge part of that is in our trees. And, if you look at Dore or the Druids, the Druid, it comes from the oak, and our first written alphabet is Own, and it comes from the trees. And it's like these little clues and these hints are actually gateways or keys into the consciousness of the ancient people of this land. And I'm just looking up here and all I can see is Courtney Davis's art, and I see the hazel, on call, the hazel, and you have the nine nuts of hazel. Like, the trees are so interwoven into our mythology, and you have the Brehon laws around the trees, and you have the nobles of the woods, the commoners of the woods, and all this. So it's like if you actually go into Irish, the Irish psyche, or the Gaelic psyche, so to speak, nearly every thread will have something in relation to the trees. And for me, my journey really began with the trees. It was always about the trees. When I was a teenager, I would, every moment that I could get, I would go to the trees, and they felt like home. It was like the sanctuary, the shower that I really needed to, yeah, to just let go. It's like, then it was when I went to Tara, and basically that was when I was 18, and I kept going back, and then the fire invited me to live there. And in this particular spot, well, it said to me, you need to live here, you need to learn from us and unlearn everything you learned in school. And in that spot, it was the oak, the ash, and the hawthorn, and those three together as the trinity. It was like, this is like a very powerful portal for learning, and dreaming with the ancestors. It's funny, it's always about dreaming with the ancestors. And that was the name that I was given when I did my apprenticeship, was ancient fire dreamer, because of that medicine of dreaming with the ancestors. But it really awoke beneath the trees. And the alchemy of the different spirits of the trees and all that they hold, and working with them through the fire or through weaving different plant medicines. I feel this is actually a huge part of our return to the old ways, which would have been centered around fire tending. It would have been centered around plant medicine and plant magic, not just working with plants on a physical level, because many of our trees, they hold great healing for the physical body, but also on a psycho spiritual level and an emotional level as well. So when I feel into like Ireland and the Druidic tradition and the ancient ways, it's just there's nothing. We are nothing without our trees, and this land was an ancient, basically a rainforest, an oak forest. And I see, as I was saying, to get back to the colonial legacy that we are healing in this time, um, because of our trees being cut down, it was like that was the severing of our roots. That was the severing of that connection with who we are, simply who we are. The Smudja, Dini, na Crean, we are the people of the trees. And that was attempted to be cut down and cleared, but it couldn't be because there's still traces. There was always traces of it. And now in this time, we are sowing new seeds and reforesting the land again, and reforesting, I suppose, that connection as well. So I feel the trees just hold so much for us. And in my time of dreaming with the land, as an eternal apprentice and student of the land, um, it's like the trees are opening up more and more to me, with the gifts that they have, and they're really, really, really powerful, like really, really powerful. And a lot of it can't even be fully expressed in words. It's like you need to go to the forest. I'm not here to tell you about what the Scots pine can do. The Scots pine can tell you that themselves. So
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
maybe went off on a bit of a tangent there, but
No, no, it was all so relevant and so beautiful. And yeah, I love all the connections you're making between, the mythology and the ancestral traditions and the spirit of the trees themselves as teachers, and all of these threads weaving together, and how colonialism really severed some of those roots. And yet the roots are still there, just waiting to be tended to and reclaimed. And yeah, I love that Ireland is going through this reforestation movement alongside of the cultural healing that's happening. It's really beautiful. And one of the things that I love to do is actually give money to a reforestation organization in Ireland, and that's one of the ways that I kind of give back to the land in my work. Yeah. And like you, I'm also just so in love with the trees, and actually used to work for a reforestation organization. And so, yeah, I really feel this remembrance that's coming through from the trees themselves. And you spoke to that so beautifully. Yeah, so beautifully. And I think what I'd love to ask you now is really just some of the ways that you like to work with the trees and the native plants from Ireland, and kind of a sacred relationship, and just whatever you feel comfortable sharing, because I'm sure there's lots of things that are just for you and close to your heart, but just some things that could inspire people to really begin or deepen that relationship. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, there's so many different ways that our connection manifests, but I suppose one of the main ways is spending time together. It's like sometimes in this world that we live in, it's like always trying to get in and get something. So it's like going in for the harvest, and although the harvest is a huge part and a beautiful part of that relationship between us and the plant people or the tree people, there's also a need to actually sit with the spirit and the plant and the tree, and to really just feel into what is it like to be in their presence. um like, what do you notice by just sitting with them? And for example, some trees and plants will open up quicker to us than others. And one friend of mine, the Scots pine or alm, only recently really started to open up to me after years of kind of reaching out to them, and you know, I suppose pottering around them, and like harvesting a bit here and there and doing little diets. But it was only recently that I had kind of a bit of a breakthrough with them. And it's like some of these relationships can take years. And that's one of the things that we have to kind of accept and be patient with, is like, I don't know all the plants and trees really, really well. How could I possibly? I'm only 26 in this lifetime. And although like I could go and download a load of information, it's like the relationship comes through the direct journey with them through the seasons. And, you know, for me with the oak and the ash and the hawthorn, that came in a quite an embodied way because I was living with them, and the nettle and everything. I was living with them every day. And when you're watching the seasons change, like the subtlety of it every single day, when you're beneath the canopy of trees, and even the subtlety in the sound of the wind blowing through the leaves as they change and grow even lighter and they're about to fall. Like there's these subtleties that can only be experienced by literally being with them and living with them. And that's not to say everyone you need to go and live in the forest, but if you can do that, I recommend it. But it's actually just having a spot, like picking one spot that maybe really resonates with you and then going to it quite often and coming with an open heart. Even if you've been going there your whole life, if you've never fully introduced yourself, I would say bring a little, you know, a little bowl of offerings, maybe some oats, maybe some herbs, whatever is sacred to you that's biodegradable, and going to this place and really introducing yourself, like introducing yourself in all of your beauty. I always introduce my name, all my names from my lineage, and what my intention is. And it's not to assume that they know who you are either, because I know they know your energy, but it's really like that honoring. It's like, this is who I am and I want to connect deeper. So going and having a little conversation, you know, I speak with the trees quite a lot. I sing with them, I play them tunes. They really love the whistle, and the harp and all the instruments that I bring. But sometimes I don't make any noise and I just listen to them and what it's bringing to me from being in their presence. Um, and you know, when you have sat with them and it feels really right, you can ask, you know, can I have some of your medicine, please? And usually I work with the moon cycle, so I would go, well, with the planets as well. So whenever that plant or tree is in its power based on its planetary alignment, um, and also with the moon. So I will like work with the plants and the trees based on where the moon is at. And I find the medicines are more potent in that way. But going to them and saying, look, you know, I really want to connect deeper with you, and not to be afraid either, because the plants and trees actually love, uh, you know, experiencing life through us as well and reaching other people through us. So asking, you know, can I make some medicine with you? And then you can make your tea or your tincture or your flower essence or a spray, or whatever it is, or, you know, a seining bundle to burn or whatever it is. And then you can experience them through your own body and how it feels actually to become one with them. So yeah, definitely medicine making is a huge part of it, and you can make oils or have a bath with them, and really you're infusing your essence with this plant spirit, and you're really yeah, just experiencing what it's like to be one with them. Another practice that I like to do is to chant their name. So you know, the ancient ones, the ancestors knew a lot about sound, and it said that when the Tuatha Dé Danann landed in Erin, they brought with them the gift of yeah, crafts, healing, and sound. Sound was a huge one, and the knowledge of the stars. So when I sit with a plant, I will just open myself and chant its name for quite a while and connect with it also on a vibrational essence then. Another way is also through the fire. I love to have like specifically a hawthorn fire, or specifically an oak, or specifically a birch, or specifically a Scots pine, or sometimes I'll weave different yeah, trees together to create an alchemical kind of energy depending on my intention. So these are some of the ways, you know, there are probably many more that I could go into, but yeah, creating your own ceremony, you know, if you say, for example, the hawthorn is calling you to go to it and to start to just build that connection by sitting with its presence. And, you know, these plants and trees that I craft medicines out of, I don't just go one day and like take the medicine and leave. It's like a whole journey where I'll like visit them throughout the year, even when they're not offering the medicine. and just sit with them and, offer them uh, my blood, offer them well water from different sacred sites. And, it's like feeding that relationship. You're constantly feeding that relationship. And as you feed that relationship, the connection deepens, and the plants and the trees, they open more to you. And with that, you can receive and be imbued more with their wisdom. So, yeah, it's something that's like, it's a way of living as opposed to kind of, yeah, it's a whole perception of life and how we can live with the land, I suppose.
Yeah. I think so many people are longing for the connections that you just described. And as you were speaking, I can feel the true embodiment of that connection and the depth of it. And I really just want to honor that in you, Aoife. And for me, it feels like, there's such a simplicity and yet a depth to the relationship that you're describing, the relationships. And it's something that, those of us who don't live in Ireland, who are living far from our ancestral lands, we can still engage with this practice, especially with trees that do grow in Ireland. It's like a very beautiful connection that can be made across, across the distance. And so, yeah, I really love that simplicity of just sitting with the trees. It's something that I have done time to time, and you're now inspiring me to do it more. And yeah, there's just such a beauty to it. So thank you so much for all that you shared. Yeah, so beautiful.
Mm.
I love that you take this approach of, reciprocity and right relationship with the trees and the plants. And I would love to talk a little bit about tending the land. Actually, one of your Instagram posts where you were tending one of the sacred sites, I think that might have been the first time I found you. And I really appreciated that, because there is so much disconnect, and just the amount of just rubbish and things that people just throw on the ground without even really realizing that this is really damaging to the not just the landscape and the ecology, but also the relationship. So I'd love to hear about the ways that you tend the land. I think that would be really beautiful to hear.
Yeah, so this also comes back to a way of life or perception within the relationship. And, for me, it wasn't always like this. I want to come back to that because I also want to drive it home to people that are like, wow, like, how can you, or like it feels so far away from maybe where they're at. I don't know. Yeah, so basically, when I first went to Tara, even I went with respect, and I went with respect for sure. But when I got into the forest, this is a really sacred place. Like, this is where the ancient druids would have performed ceremony. And like, I didn't ask permission. I didn't, because I didn't know what that was. I was 18 at the time, and I didn't have a human guide. I was only guided by the spirits and the ancestors at that point. And I didn't realize that I had to like really ask permission. And for 3 days straight, I tried to light a fire, and it just wouldn't light, and it never happened to me before. Even at that point in my journey, I was really deeply connected with the fire and able to light one at the drop of a hat. So I was like, there's something not right here. There's something being shown to me. And then I left the forest, and I just was messing around with my hatchet, and I threw it in front of me, and it literally vanished. I mean, it completely disappeared into the land. And I was like, no, no, there's something, like, this is like the sheer speaking to me here. And in that moment, I realized, wow, I didn't ask permission. I didn't really acknowledge the spirits that are in that place. I just barged into their home and started trying to light a fire. And although I was, not causing any harm as such, that's a really special place. And in that moment, it was like my whole auric field just opened, and I started to perceive everything around me in a very different way. I could hear, feel, and experience, yeah, my environment in a different way. And I started to see all the rubbish that was like even little tiny fragments of tinfoil that were stuck around the hill of Tara. And it was like the she were showing me, they were like, we want this gone. So I was going around cleaning, picking up little bits, and basically I started to do that every day, and the space started opening up more and more to me. Of course, I was able to light a fire then. And I started to kind of, yeah, just be shown things that needed to be done around the place. And a big part of that would be cleaning out wells now, in particular, maybe not as much back then because I didn't have the experience, or I didn't know how to do it. But yeah, I started to notice that, okay, rubbish is a big part of it, and the she really don't like specific materials, specifically tinfoil. They really don't like tinfoil. Um, and when I did that, there was this kind of exchange that was taking place where miraculous things would begin to happen, and I would be gifted loads of incredible things from the land, but also from people. And I was like, wow, there's something going on here. When I look after the land looks after me. And I was seeing this kind of mirroring of energy that was happening within the land when I was just stepping into pure guardianship. I wasn't doing it out of a place of I want to get something from this. I was just doing it because I was there in service. And that was when I started to understand what service actually meant, you know. So just from being there and listening and being present on the land, I could see the energies that needed to be shifted or things that needed to be done. And from that space of listening, then I have continued to live my life from that place. So, you know, if it's planting trees somewhere like we did recently here where I grew up, then it's the planting of the trees. If it's, you know, there's also a well here where I grew up that is at jeopardy of being built upon, you know, but we've put in a proposal for it to be restored and protected. That's another way that is tending to the land and being in service. Yeah, the fires that I do at different places, sometimes I do that for the public, other times it's in places and it's private, and it's because the energy of a place needs to be shifted, or I get to a place and you know it's the energy isn't right, the altar hasn't been tended to at a certain well, and that needs to be tended to. It's basically being called to different places and supporting those spaces and tending to these sacred spaces, because that's what we've always done. You know, it's not like, oh, I'm like a special guardian. This is just part of life. Do you know what I mean? I'm living it, but this is actually just part of life. We were always tending to these places. We would have always gathered in community and cleared out the well and tended to it, because that well was our sustenance. It's where we would have gotten all of our water to drink before there was taps and everything. So really, yeah, there's many ways that this tending takes place. And you know, if it's not, you know, even this year I sowed like a couple of hundred mugwort plants instead of just for myself, because now I'm gonna plant them all over Ireland. Do you know what I mean? Because there's actually not enough mugwort here, and it's not just for me to go and harvest, but it's actually an offering for these different spaces. So it's kind of always having the land and the good of all in heart, but also the future generations of how can I be a future ancestor in the work that I do? How can each little decision and choice that I make leave a good legacy behind?
So beautiful. I really love that sense of, I am an ancestor and I'm continuing these traditions that have always been here and always been part of, my people, my heritage. So, so beautiful. And yeah, I love reading through the National Folklore Collection and all the different practices of people honoring the wells and honoring the sacred sites and the ways that people were in communion with the land. And so, yes, it's always been there. And yeah, you're continuing that, which is so beautiful. And so many of us are continuing in different ways. But yeah, you're really there on the land doing this beautiful work in such a deep way. And I really appreciate all of that so much. And it's so beautiful to feel how the way that you're in relationship and reciprocity with the land really does have this energy of healing. And I know that part of your work and your intention is cultural healing alongside of healing our relationship with the land and healing the land itself. And I would just love to hear more about the ways that you feel we can heal, personally and collectively by being in deep communion, right, with the plants and with the trees. And then I'd love to branch into a conversation about Ireland healing from colonialism and all of that as well. But maybe we can start with the kind of more personal and then kind of zoom out to the more of the collective level, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So I think like a huge part of the problem, there's, I mean, there is a problem right now in the world, and that is disconnection, and disconnection from ourselves, from one another, and from the truth, which is love, from the earth, and from sovereignty. And all of these things are all one, really. They're all the same thing. And for me, as a person, I suppose, born into the epicenter of challenge and addiction and trauma and everything that coexists in the place where I grew up, the medicine that healed me and continues to heal me is the earth. And I can only speak from my own experience and also what I've witnessed for other people. But, medicines of the earth and living with the earth has brought me into deep wholeness and helped me remember who I am time and time again. Because it's not like it just all happened overnight. It was like a forgetting and a remembering again and again. Um, and for me, with going to Tara and I started to drink from the wells, for example, like I can't, it's just not an option to drink tap water anymore. It's like when once you experience what it's like to drink pure spring water, that comes like it's like the difference between breast milk and milk from a formula. You know what I mean? It's like your nourishment from the mother, or a formulated kind of chemical thing that is just like not really right. Um, but this is the difference. These are the options that we have. We can either drink from our mothers, like milk, or we can have this formulated existence. So it's like the difference between an organic and a non-organic life. And I'm not just talking about like whether it's sprayed with pesticides or not, but as a way of life that is organic, that is connected with the earth. And this is just simply getting back to the core of what it is to be human. And in this world where there is so much disconnection and confusion, so many souls so deeply lost, depressed, and malnourished, it's really down to being malnourished. And what is the malnourishment? It's the disconnection from the earth and from the beauty of life. Because how can you feel that depression when you step out into the forest that's thriving and singing like sweet song from the birds and and there's a fire crackling there and your community are gathered around it. This is really what we're getting back to. Is it's not just an individual journey either. I believe that the time of the individual journey is over, and now we're actually really being asked to heal in community and to come back together as one tribe, because that's where the power is. So I believe that it's time for us all to return to the earth and to a natural way of being in whatever way that manifests for you, because it doesn't all have to be, this is the way. I don't believe in that. I feel that everyone's connection and relationship manifests in different ways. And that's why, I'm a hawthorn tree, but someone else may be a oak. And, that's how a forest coexists with many different species of trees. And I believe we're the same. So I'm not saying this is the ultimate truth and this is the way you should live, but I just know that the formula for life that has been really helpful for me is being outside as much as I possibly can, drinking really good quality water from the earth, eating as close to the earth as I possibly can, and being by the fire with community and celebrating life. And I think with those ingredients, I think we can really heal a lot of the troubles that are in the world today.
Mm. Really just taking a moment to absorb your beautiful wisdom there, and it just hits so deep, and I imagine people listening can feel that depth as well. And yeah, when you said it's really about remembering, what it is to be human, something to that effect, it just hit me straight in my heart, because it's it's like we're living a more and more artificial life. And the more that I see things like AI and what have you, it's like just going to such an extreme. And this simple return to the earth is something that we desperately need to do, or we're all going to suffer, because the earth cannot continue to hold the amount of trash that we're putting in her, the amount of chemicals that we're putting in her. And it's something that needs to happen. And we all know it. At least most of us know it. And yet there's such it's like there's a block around it somehow. And I feel this even within myself. It's like there's something we really have to get through around the conditioning that we have to be dependent on, the food and the water that the system gives us, And we have to really break down that narrative and that block to really come back to something that is innately ours, and that just simplicity of being human. And so, yeah, I was really having a deep realization about that block, and I feel it within myself, of being so reliant on a system to feed me and nourish me, and it's all artificial. It's not organic, as you said. It's not the same as drinking from the well water. So, yeah, thank you for illuminating that. Really, really beautiful. And yeah, I would love to kind of move into this conversation a little bit about what I've heard you call soul revival on a national level, in terms of Ireland healing as a nation, and how people can heal and reclaim sovereignty through the wisdom of the land, and maybe how the Irish diaspora can be part of this healing as well. And I'd love to hear about that aspect of things. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, we're in absolutely transformational times. Like, no matter where you are on the earth right now, we're in transformational times. But particularly here on the land of Eru, there is a huge soul retrieval happening on a national level that, it's been a long time coming, and this is why I chose to incarnate in this time, and you did, and all of us that are tapped into this, yeah, I suppose this timeline of retrieval and reclamation. It's really, really powerful, and I think we're actually creating history right now. Like, people will look back at these times and say, wow, wow, like, um and so basically we're emerging out of like a long time of darkness, where there was basically, a dark force had a hold of the soul of Ireland. That's the way I see it. And when I look into it, and the many journeys I've done upon different sacred sites, and sat into the energies on these places, and really looked into the fire, and seeing everything that has been happening upon these lands for, hundreds and hundreds of years. If it wasn't the English, the Crown, the Catholic Church, there so much darkness has happened, and had a hold of the people, and literally sucking the life out of the people. And in this time, where it's actually safe, because before it wasn't safe, and basically we were in this collective state of freeze. We were just frozen in survival mode, getting on with it. And in these times where it's actually safe, and most of our basic needs are being met. I mean, I won't go into the housing or anything else of what it's like here in Ireland at the moment, but most of our needs are being met on a collective level. Our basic needs, we are able to actually go into that space of melting the iceberg of trauma that has been frozen for, many, many generations. And our ancestors, they didn't have the benefit and the privilege to actually have these kind of spaces that we have, and ceremonies, and opportunities to heal and to go into this stuff. It wasn't the time, it wasn't the time to do it, but we are very privileged in this time to have the resources and the ability to be going in to process everything that has happened. And that's what's happening. We are processing, shedding, healing, releasing, feeling very deeply, and grieving and mourning everything that was lost, taken, or stolen, or given away. And in that release, there is also a reclamation. There is a remembering, there is a creation of the space when we have let go of the grief, which so much has been let go of in these past years. It's been basically a non-stop healing journey. Like, the fires have just brought up so much. And I'm so grateful for all the medicine keepers that walk on these lands, and also afar, that are doing this work for the diaspora, like yourself, on other lands. Because Ireland, we have basically the widest diaspora in the world, and we can't talk about the Irish people or the Gaels without considering the diaspora and everything they have to hold in these threads of healing and remembrance. But yeah, so we're in momentous times. We're in really momentous times where so much is being restored, and we are reframing and rediscovering what it is to be Irish. What does it mean to actually live in an embodied way, and that honors the ancestral traditions, and to, I suppose, weave together again a tapestry of our lineage that is whole and complete. so that we can pass that on to the future generations, and there isn't this kind of severance or fragmentation that a lot of us were born into and had to reclaim ourselves. So, on a collective level, there's so much, and so many people have different threads within that. But it never went away though. I always say that it's like the fire of the Gaels or the chin in the nail. It burned down to maybe an ember, but it never went out. And there was always a time where, a guardian or a medicine keeper would come along and they'd put a log on the fire and keep it going. And there was people that practiced our traditions in secret. And many of our traditions, they're hidden in our stories, they're hidden in these sacred places. And by us on the journey that we're on now, we are rekindling that fire and we're bringing it into a blazer, actually. Do you know what I mean? It feels like the fire of this land is burning really strong at this time, and that fire is calling many of the children of this land that their ancestors had to leave to return again. And that's why you have this huge resurgence of the diaspora reaching out to journey into their roots again. And this can be done in many ways, a way of doing that is learning about, where did your ancestors come from? Maybe what part of Ireland or Scotland or Wales or whatever it is, wherever it is, and within the Isles, where did they come from? And maybe doing a little tracking of, the migration patterns and learning some stories, like what were their story? What are your people's story? And if you can't find out their personal stuff, then maybe more general of like learning some songs in Irish, learning about the Irish mythology, learning about some of the sacred places. Please come here. Like there's nothing better than you can do than coming here. But if you can't come here, then you can journey here in other ways through people like Tara and myself and other people that are um, offering spaces for people to reconnect with their lineage and to rediscover what that means for you, because for everyone that will be something different based on the ancestral gifts that you were given and the connections that your own personal ancestors of blood have bestowed upon you in this life. So yeah, I think it looks different for everyone, but there's a huge return to ancestral veneration and ancestral relationship that is so important within this cultural reclamation.
Beautifully, beautifully said. And just taking in all the different threads you wove together there, and reflecting on my own journey of returning to Ireland and feeling that connection to the land and listening to the land. I love that you talked about listening so much throughout this conversation. And when I was there last August, I went to hEochaidh and sat with the catstone. I forget the name in Irish. Maybe you can remind me.
All the word.
Thank you. Yes, the stone of divisions. And I was sitting with the stone and in just such deep communion and listening, and I could feel how the stone, as hEochaidh is the center of the island, the navel of the island, is like almost like bringing in all this healing. It was kind of like a magnet, and this is how I experienced it anyway. And it was like calling back in all that's been forgotten and calling the children home who were lost overseas, and calling back the lineages. And of course, hEochaidh is a place where there's, the fire festival and the beautiful raging fire you were speaking about. I was thinking about, the fire at hEochaidh, the fires. And so it feels like this really incredible time of remembering, as you were describing. And I feel that so deeply. And those of you listening, maybe you can feel that as well in your blood and in your bones. Yeah. Aoife, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation. It's been such a joy to connect with you. And, I've been watching your work from afar for a little while now. And this conversation is all that I hoped for and more, and just so beautiful to connect with you. And I would love for you to just share with all the listeners, where they can find you and your website and all of those things, so people can come and work with you if they're hearing that call.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you so much for having me here. It's been so beautiful. I could talk to you forever. Yeah, there's so many threads there that are so connected between our hearts and our vision for this life. So yeah, honoring your medicine and all that you bring forth for the women and the people, so important in this time. And yeah, so if people want to work with me, I mainly use Instagram as a platform. So my name on Instagram is Aoife Dedannan, Dedanann. And yeah, I do a lot of online and in-person work. So throughout the year, I will offer seasonal and ancestral events. So working with native plants and trees, mainly hawthorn and mugwort at the moment, are my main two allies that are wishing to be brought forward. So I do, yeah, online workshops with plants. So I often do journeys for like a whole moon cycle with mugwort, and it's an absolute immersion into connecting with the plants and dreaming with the plants throughout the year. And I also have a 5-day retreat coming up with Leah Luce with Mugwort, and that's going to be in Ireland, here on this beautiful sacred land in Sligo, in Sligo, and that's coming up from the 30th of June to the 5th of July. So you can have a look at all my offerings on my Instagram, but also on my website, which is Leia Stay Dannon, and you can find that through the link in my bio on my Instagram. So yeah, I mainly work with women actually. It's not like I ever intentionally say women, and like all people and bodies are welcome, but it seems to be circles of, yeah, Mana Fasa, wise women that gather and that feel called to, yeah, come and remember this kind of relationship and way of being. So yeah, this is Shanae, really.
Thank you, Aoife. Your offerings are so beautiful, and yeah, I'm actually feeling really called to come and do your mugwort moon, the journey throughout the moon cycle. That sounds really beautiful. And yeah, I hope that everyone listening goes and checks out Aoife's Instagram and her website. Yeah, she has such beautiful offerings. So thank you everyone who has been here listening with us and really honoring our ancestors who we called in at the beginning, and honoring the trees as our ancestors. And just want to take this moment to have a little bit of silence to really honor our ancestors. All of you listening, you can honor your ancestors as well in this moment of silence. Mila Brihes. 1,000 thanks to the ancestors. Okay, loves, thank you all so much for being with us for this beautiful conversation. Thank you, Aoife. And I hope that you all have a beautiful rest of your day and feel inspired to go and connect with the trees and connect with nature and the land in beautiful and heartfelt ways. Goodbye, everyone. Until next time.